Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 251, Resounding Victory. Hassan stood up as the ground quaked and turned back to see the thunder clouds billowing over to where he was. The torrential rain washed over the armored cavalry and splashed among the hooves along with the splatter of mud. As the pack of wolves howled and dashed, the intimidating sense of oppressiveness, which had not made an appearance in a long time, swept across the battlefield. This was the edge that belonged to the Libai armored cavalry. The moment Xiao Qiye appeared on the battlefield of Zongbo, Hassan's swift assault failed. He did not manage to storm into the city of Duan province. Instead, he lost his brave general and elites here. Staying any longer would be a drain on resources. He ought to withdraw his soldiers at this time. The vanguards at the city gate had already turned their horses around, while the messengers at the back of the trench brandished the Hongying banner in between gallops. The Libai armored cavalry that formed a long dragon intercepted access to the southeast, so the Scorpions pushed their siege weapons and began to retreat towards the Hashi River in the east. The city gate opened soon after, and Tantai, who led the garrison troops, who had been holding back for 2 days, out in a charge with blades in hands. With all his might, he shouted, "Second master is here." With his scimitar, Hassan flipped onto an empty horse. He commanded in the Biancha tongue for the elites to fall out and split into 2 barriers bringing up the rear. They were to obstruct the Imperial cavalry and Libai armored cavalry in the west and southeast, so as to buy time for the withdrawing military supplies squad in the center. "Your lordship." Huo Lingyun spurred his horse on with one hand and rushed over to Shenzequan with Feng Ta Shuangyi in tow. Shenzequan picked up Yang Shan Shui with his left hand. He did not mount his horse but watched as Hassan led the elites in a gallop south to face Xiao Qiye head-on in a battle. The prefectural lord said, "Ready." Huo Lingyun reacted swiftly. From where he was on his horse, he raised his arm and shouted towards the city wall, "Ready." Hassan's back figure was just about to disappear into the heavy rain, but his red hair was far too conspicuous, like an illuminated live target in the rain. Shenzequan looked at him as if he was staring at a moving rabbit. Hassan seemed to sense something under the raindrops, and he looked back to see Shenzequan saying something through the rainstorm. The mounted crossbow at the top of the city wall fired at once. Massive arrows, which resembled an ox cart rampaging in the air, shot its way behind Hassan in the blink of an eye. Hassan was forced to dismount at this critical juncture as the swift torrents of rain splattered all over. At the very instant he rolled, those huge arrows crashed into the squad of elite cavalry, knocking them off to the ground. The ponies could not dodge in time at all, and those that were struck were all killed on the spot. The ponies neighed in alarm and tumbled over into the mud. Sprays of blood instantly spurted. This squad was now broken up. The mounted crossbow struck terror in the hearts of the Biancha cavalry. Its superior killing power was not something that one man alone could withstand. Every time it appeared on the battlefield, it would result in countless casualties. Hassan crawled to his feet and suddenly swung his scimitar in front to intercept Xiao Qiye's longly blade. However, Xiao Qiye was not Shenzequan. Hassan's scimitar paused for only a split second when Xiao Qiye slammed it down to the ground, causing it to nearly slip from his hand. This strength was too terrifying. Hassan's entire body sank along with it. He steadied his scimitar with both hands and bellowed as he attempted to lift it. Xiao Qiye was not wearing a helmet. Rainwater trickled down along his temples, and filthy blood that had yet to be scoured clean by the rain slid across his facial features. He slowly dragged Longly Blade, and at this moment when he looked down on Hassan, he flashed a spine-chilling smile. "I was looking for you." The sound of the rain raged. Dark, gloomy clouds blotted out the sky, threatening to crush down on the battlefield. Thunder crashed close overhead. In the darkness, Hassan saw the fangs of the wolf. The scimitar slammed sideways, letting Longly Blade slip away. The instant Hassan retreated, Lang Tao Shuijin's front hoof stomped down on the footprints he had left behind and sent up a splash of dirty filth. The surrounding Bianchi cavalry and the Libai armored cavalry clashed together into a chaotic whole. The armored cavalry's brand new blades had their fills of fresh blood over at Bianjun, so sharp were they as if they were roaring right now. As Hassan swiftly retreated, he got onto his horse once again. Longly blades suddenly came attacking right in his face, and his horse took several steps back in response. Xiao Qiye pressed in every step of the way, as if he was revitalized. Tan Tai Hu sprang up and jumped into the Bianchi cavalry, who was attempting to withdraw. Swinging his blade, he first hacked off the pony's legs, then led his men to chase after the scorpions who were moving their weapons. He squeezed out a fiendish smile and said, "To hell with you. Pay with your lives, Baldies." Duan province finally began to launch a counter-offensive. The imperial cavalry raced across the trench, pushing the surge of the Bianchi cavalry towards the east. The armored cavalry squad near the riverbanks of the Hashi River intercepted along the north of the river, severing the path right at the riverside where the Bianchi cavalry were dashing back. Together with the garrison troops and imperial cavalry, they formed a three-way encirclement to force the Bianchi cavalry into gathering at the open space in the center. The only opening still left now was in the north, but Hassan hesitated to order a retreat to the north, because the north was close to Shazan camp. He was worried that this was a deliberate trap Xiao Qiye left for him, and he was even more worried that Lu Guangbai was lying in ambush in the north. He was already virtually in a dead end, besieged on all sides. Longly blade cleaved towards his throat, and Hassan nimbly bent over to dodge the blow. At the same time he parried the blade, he commanded in the Bianchi tongue, "Switch vanguards." The elites who were meeting the Libai armored cavalry's attack instantly retreated. Seizing their opportunity, the scorpions formed a diagonal wall in the southeast. As they spurred their ponies on, they swung their hammers high. Longly blade suddenly lifted, the face of the blade catching the rapidly drumming raindrop as it lay leveled in mid-air, like the last chain that tethered the armored cavalry. Xiao Qiye did not move, and neither did the armored cavalry behind him. "Charge!" Hassan commanded. The hooves of the scorpions' ponies galloped into the mud. At the same time the mix of muddy water and rainwater hit them in their faces, they yelled out in the Bianchi tongue. Xiao Qiye lowered his arms. Before the garrison troops at the top of the city wall could get a clear look, they heard the armored cavalry simultaneously returning their blades to their sheath. The armored cavalry was actually keeping away their blades at this time. Standing in front, Xiao Qiye twirled out his new long blade. It was as if the armored cavalry had flung off their iron sheet cover. Loud clangs simultaneously rang out, revealing uniformly colored long blades on the flanks of the horses. The long blade had never seen blood back at the Bianjun commandery. These blades had only revealed their prowess at the Hashi sinkhole. And now, as they soaked in the rain, it was still rainwater dripping off the shiny tips of the blades. The scorpions' iron hammers swung before them, and the Libai armored cavalry suddenly opened up. They broke up the vanguard squad and swiftly shifted over to both sides to allow the scorpions to gallop in unimpeded. The scorpions were midway through when Hassan had a sense of foreboding. However, his order to withdraw would not make its way here at all, because the armored cavalry vanguard squads on both sides had started to gallop back. Xiao Qiye charged at the very front and brushed past the scorpions. Thunder crashed in fury, and the sound of rain intensified. The scorpions' hammers had not even come close when the long blades slashed off their heads. The Libai armored cavalry at the southeast were just like fortified iron cages as they ate the scorpions, pushing them even deeper into an encirclement trap. Then they snuffed out the lives of the scorpions with their long blades right there and then, just like what Xiao Qiye did. The armored cavalry flashed their blades in unison, followed right after by the sound of heads tumbling. Hassan instantly commanded, "Break out from the east." He could not continue to battle on. Whatever advantages the Bianchi cavalry used to have had vanished entirely here. All that awaited the scorpions when they charged into the armored cavalry's encirclement was slaughter. Hassan risked a surprise attack on Duan province, and he had already lost too much here. He had to immediately cut his losses and break out of the encirclement and cross the river as soon as possible. The scorpions at the back abandoned their fights. They mounted their horses and urged on the infantry hauling the weapons as all of them charged eastward. Hassan galloped in the rain. Icy rainwater pounded on his cheeks. He stared ahead, killing a bloody way out at breakneck speed, but the sound of hooves suddenly rang out beside him as Lang Tao Shuijing kept up in hot pursuit. Hassan's scimitar chipped as he parried the blow. Xiao Qiye's speed was even faster. Both men spared no efforts galloping, charging in the rainstorm like an artillery shell. Hassan broke through to the very edge. The Gobi on the banks of the Hashi River was just right ahead. The Biancha cavalry that had gone into the water were engaged in an intense battle with the imperial army that was lying in ambush here. The shallows were already an expanse of red. Hassan galloped into the river. Lang Tao Shuijin slammed into the side of the battle steed's neck, knocking Hassan's horse askew. He had to pull the reins to control it. Xiao Qiye brandished his blade to cut off Hassan's reins, and the horse powerlessly turned its body and tumbled into the shallows with Hassan in tow. Hassan rolled the moment he landed on the ground. He lost his pike dagger at the edge of the trench when he fought with Shenzequan, and all he had now were his scimitar and dagger. The sound of killing around him was deafening. He scooped up the river water with his freed hand and wiped his eyes clean of the dirty blood obscuring them. Xiao Qiye landed on the ground too, his tall, strapping body blocking off Hassan's eastward-looking gaze, becoming the mountain standing between Hassan and the desert. Hassan brought his bent scimitar before his chest and adjusted his breathing. At the same time that Xiao Qiye sprang towards him, he lunged over. The sound of blades clashing was jarring on the ears. Xiao Qiye pressed his blade against Hassan's scimitar and pushed Hassan back. With some difficulty, Hassan stabilized himself. Rainwater pounded on his blade. At the very instant they splashed away, he abruptly withdrew his blade and dodged aside to evade the blow as Longli blade swept forward. River water splashed all over along with their footsteps. Xiao Qiye's cheeks were still stained with residual blood on them. His combat style of only advancing and not retreating seemed like desperate moves, revealing an intense desire to go on the offensive. Every slash of his numbed Hassan's arms. Under the intensive assault of Longli blade, his scimitar was nearly about to turn into scrap metal. Hassan abruptly tumbled over amidst Xiao Qiye's hacks. As he was about to fall into the water, he forcibly braced himself with his arms and raised his body. Then he squatted and lifted his blade to block the blow once again. Without changing his posture, Xiao Qiye simply pressed down on him with all his might. Under the force of it, Hassan's scimitar slowly shifted down close to his shoulder. He could even feel Longli blade's sharpness. A ragged gasp escaped from Hassan's throat. The downward pressure from Xiao Qiye was making his legs hurt, and they were already beginning to bend downward. Hassan would never kneel to Xiao Qiye. Untold numbers of people had starved to death when the 12 tribes kneeled before Great Zhou. He had come this far all just to find that one way out for themselves. Hassan held Lake Chidi dear. Yet, for countless years, he had been sleeping among blades and swords. He had never once bowed to the armored cavalry. He was the heroic eagle soaring in the blue dome of heaven. Hassan did his best to hold up against Xiao Qiye's strength. He bellowed and roused himself to hoist up Longli blade. Brazenly, he lunged forward and very nearly sliced Xiao Qiye's neck. Xiao Qiye took a sudden step back and bent his elbow to knock away Hassan's scimitar. The horse beside him neighed and fell over. Hassan flipped his dagger out and lunged again before Xiao Qiye could attack. Unable to turn Longli blade around in time, Xiao Qiye let go of the hilt and blocked the dagger with the arm guard on his right arm. His left hand clenched into a fist, and he socked Hassan into the water. A spray of water exploded forth from Hassan's fall. He coughed out water and lunged before Xiao Qiye came up to him. Wrapping his arms around Xiao Qiye's waist, he hooked his leg around Xiao Qiye to trip him and knock him down into the water. Water splashed. In a countermove, Xiao Qiye grasped the back of Hassan's collar tightly and held him in a chokehold from behind. Hassan could barely breathe. He thrust his dagger out and struck heavy armor. He immediately gave up and jabbed the dagger at Xiao Qiye's eyes. Xiao Qiye could only let go and moved back to evade it. Hassan swapped tactics and wrapped his arms around Xiao Qiye's arm, then he turned to the side and flung Xiao Qiye over his shoulder. Hassan held down Xiao Qiye's face so that Xiao Qiye could not breathe in the fast-flowing river. He clasped his dagger and made to cut off Xiao Qiye's head. Xiao Qiye backhandedly grabbed hold of the dagger. At the same time the blade sank into his flesh, he arbitrarily straightened up and slammed into Hassan's jaw. Hassan's eyes watered. In this split second of vulnerability, Xiao Qiye elbowed him in the chest. He did not manage to stop the spurt of blood from his mouth. Xiao Qiye released the dagger, and clenching his bleeding hand into a fist, he once again punched Hassan over to the ground. This one blow was too brutal. Hassan was bleeding from his nose and mouth. He was even a little dizzy. The sound of combat and killing alternated close and far. The heavy downpour blurred the scenery. As he braced himself with his arms, he realized his leather sleeve had split, and the flower of Qidi in his sleeve pocket drifted away with the water. Hassan did not manage to catch the flower, and in the blink of an eye, hooves trampled the flower to a pulp. Xiao Qiye pulled up Longli blade again, both of his eyes wet. Hassan had seen such a wolf before. It was with such a gaze that Xiao Qiye had chased him for dozens of li in that heavy snow. The Libai armored cavalry broke up the Bianchi cavalry, leaving them with no way to flee along the banks of the Hashi River. The river water of the shallows was thoroughly red, and floating corpses piled up around the corner. The heavy rain soaked everyone's face white. Hassan never got to wait until the reinforcements he left at Gidal arrived. As Hassan gasped for breath, he raised his head in the rain. He could not see over Xiao Qiye's shoulder at the opposite bank of the Hashi River. He dejectedly murmured to himself in silence. "May the gods bless." Longli blade suddenly thrust into the shallows. Blood flowed down along the blade to disperse in the water. With a thud, Hassan's body fell to its knees in the rapid currents before falling face first into the waters. Xiao Qiye's chest heaved under the clamor of the rainstorm. The sounds of hooves behind him ceased. In the boundless expanse of heaven and earth, the armored cavalry all looked at him. Facing the Hashi River, Xiao Qiye raised his arm that was lifting the red hair. Only the sound of the rapids could be heard in the long, endless silence. Tantai Hu waded 2 steps through the water. He tossed his blade away and cried out straight ahead, "We won." "We," the armored cavalry's throats let loose repressed chokes of sobs before they erupted in earth-shaking roars, "We are wolves." The shadow of gloom hanging over them for as long as half a year finally ebbed away. Blood of countless people flowed in the Hashi River that ran through the north and south. In the torrential rainstorm, Libai reclaimed its dignity. Xiao Qiye clenched his fists tight, his eyes silently reddening. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 252, Frontier Lizard. The rain subsided, and Xiao Qiye withdrew back to the city gate of Duan province. The garrison troops started to work non-stop to clean up the battlefield. Having already overflowed, the water in the trench soaked the segment of the path before the gate into a soggy mess. Hooves treading past here were all covered in mud, and everyone was dirty through and through. Shenzhequan stood before the city gate and watched as Lang Tao Shuijing galloped closer. Xiao Qiye leaned over from the back of his horse, and Shenzhequan lifted his right arm to trade light bumps with him. Gazing at Shenzhequan, Xiao Qiye did not retract his arm. Instead, he turned his hand over to lift it close to Shenzhequan's chin. In the rain, and with his eyes lowered, he and Shen Zequan mutually pressed their foreheads together. The rain enveloped both men deep in its embrace. Shen Zequan closed his eyes. Rainwater trickled along his eyelashes and dripped onto the bridge of Xiao Qiye's nose. He slowly smiled and gradually laughed out loud. Qiao Tianya rode his horse over. Midway through, he reined his horse to a stop. Leaning over to look at Ji Gang, he asked, "Where's Shifu going?" Ji Gang stood at the entrance of the passageway for a while before tossing the overcoat in his hands to Qiao Tianya. He looked at the curtain of rain. Qiao Tianya draped the overcoat over himself. "Shifu, the Ji clan boxing fist's name will once again spread far and wide after this battle. The old senior Ji can rest in peace if he were to learn of it." Ji Gang looked up at the sky, and rainwater splashed into his eyes. After a long time, he said, "Duan province is going to have an abundant harvest this year." Qiao Tianya smiled. Putting his hands behind his back, Ji Gang turned around and let loose a long sigh. Not looking at Shen Zequan any further, he said, "Hurry and summon the physician over." ******. The rain did not stop until the hour of Mao the next day. The bamboo tubes in the courtyard kept up with its tapping against the mossy rocks. Wrapped in a short lined jacket, Ding Tao stood guard with Li Xiong in the hallway and watched as the physicians entered and exited. "I'm thirsty," Li Xiong said. Clutching his book, Ding Tao whispered, "Then go pour yourself some water to drink. I'm going to stand guard here." Li Xiong looked reluctant as he blocked the hallway and shook his head vigorously, unwilling to go alone. Inside, Kong Ling lifted the hanging screen and led the physician out with a grave expression. Fei Sheng had only just woken up and had come over to be on duty. Seeing them emerge, he immediately stepped forth to take over and had his subordinate lead the physician to the side hall. He asked Kong Ling, "Mister, how's master?" Kong Ling shook his head and walked into the room again with him. He said in a hushed tone, "Don't make a din when you enter later and disturb his lordship. Second master is on tenterhooks right now. He has been waiting inside the whole night without sleeping." Fei Sheng did not dare to say a word more and followed Kong Ling into the room, where he saw the bamboo blinds lowered in the inner chamber. Xiao Qiye, who had removed his armor, was in the midst of reading the prescription. The physician who had yet to leave stood primly opposite the second master, bowing as he said in a soft voice, "It'll prove difficult for him to hold a blade again in the future. Those two fingers." Fei Sheng had an ill sense of foreboding when he heard these two sentences. His heart sank as he looked at Xiao Qiye's grave expression, so oppressively intimidating was it that those waiting in attendance inside were all as silent as cicadas in winter. His waist, and calf, and the right arm that Hassan almost detached. Shen Zequan still looked fine when he had just returned yesterday. It was only when he washed his face clean that they could see just how ghastly pale his complexion was. The two fingers on his right hand were already swollen to begin with, and then he had fallen into the trench during his fight with Hassan, where he had further aggravated it from the grappling and soaking in the filthy water. His right hand could not move at all. In the end, he even had to use his left hand to lift Yang Shan Shui. He did not return to the city immediately, and instead, he put on a carefree, laid-back act. In truth, the wound on his waist had torn open when he straightened up, and getting on the horse proved to be too difficult for him, so he could only use all his willpower to hang on and pretend all was fine while letting Huo Lingyun lead the horse instead. The instant Shen Zequan's nerves that had been stretched taut with tension relaxed, the after effect of getting drenched in the rain kicked in. He thought he was asleep, but in fact, he was in a half-comatose state. His fever the night before came raging with vehemence, and even now, it had yet to subside. He vomited everything he ate. His stomach was all stuffed with hard steamed buns, and after puking them all out, he regurgitated bile. The lowered drapes were opaque. Xiao Qiye waited for the physician to leave before he opened up a slit to look at Lanzhou. Lanzhou's hair spread out among the bedding. Unable to curl up, he half laid on the side that was not injured, revealing a little of his side profile. The upturned corner of his eye did not have its usual seductive allure. He looked as if he was sleeping normally. Xiao Qiye touched the corner of his eye. He did not move. As long as Xiao Qiye was by his side, he would dare to be this unguarded. He looked very, very small, being completely enveloped by Xiao Qiye's figure. Xiao Qiye had difficulty breathing. It hurt everywhere in his chest. He leaned over and kissed Lanzhou on his temple. His fingertips moved ever so lightly, as if he was caressing a baby cub that was still a fluff of fur. The physicians in the courtyard came and went. They fed the prefectural lord a bowl of medicine, and Shen Zequin vomited it out again at the hour of C. Seeing that it did not work, Ji Gang hoisted the physician over to continue taking a look at Shen Zequin. The side hall was crammed full of people. The joy of having survived a calamity had not even passed, and already the residence was shrouded in a cloud of gloom. During the hour of Shen, the military reports from the battle zone arrived. They were stacked together with the military reports from the Bianjun Commandery, pressing Xiao Qiye to read them. Xiao Qiye did not dare to leave Shen Zequin, so he had it all sent to the side hall and took the time he used to drink water to stand in the side hall, where he read the military reports while listening to the physicians rattle off the prescriptions all at the same time. Ding Tao did not dare to stir up any trouble at this moment. Leading Li Xiong by the sleeve, he said, "There's a water jar at the foot of the walkway. I'll pour you a cup." Li Xiong did not move his feet. He rubbed his nose and nodded unhappily. Unable to pull Li Xiong into moving, Ding Tao asked in puzzlement, "Why aren't you moving?" Li Xiong did not make a sound as he looked at someone coming over from the moon gate. Fei Shen was leading a newly arrived physician inside. They crossed the walkway in the blink of an eye, and with a lift of the hanging screen, they entered the room, where Kong Ling and the other gentlemen were keeping watch in the outer room. This newly arrived physician looked decent and had a Fan province accent as he said, "His lordship mustn't get caught in the rain with this body of his. Given the way he's vomiting, he certainly won't be able to keep the medicine down." He shook his sleeves up and had the apprentice accompanying him open his medical chest. He then took out the kit of acupuncture needles and showed it to Gao Zhongxiang, who was standing at the side. "I'll use a few acupuncture needles on him." Kong Ling stood up and said, "No hurry. Wait for the second master to come over before making a decision." The physician spread his hands and said, "Saving a life is like putting out a fire. It cannot be delayed. How about this? You gentlemen hurry up and send someone to urge the second master over. Meanwhile, I'll get everything ready." Gao Zhongxiang repeatedly voiced his agreement and made his way out. But when he walked to the door, he found Li Xiong blocking the doorway. The physician turned his back to them and lifted a portion of the hanging screen to walk into the inner chamber, at the same time still instructing the apprentice, "Lift the chest in." Fei Sheng sensed something the instant the apprentice collected the kit of acupuncture needles. He suddenly grasped hold of the hilt of his blade and bellowed, "Hold it." However, the apprentice instantly swung his hand, and cold glints from inside the kit flashed. Fei Sheng could dodge but not the gentleman, so he could only draw his blade to block the blow. Under a series of clinking and clanking sounds as the concealed weapon struck against his blade, he bumped Kong Ling away. The table and chairs in the outer room overturned with a clatter. Kong Ling lost his balance, and as he fell onto the rug, he stretched out his hands and shouted with urgency, "Men! Come quick!" The physician had already leaped into the inner room. The bamboo blinds fell with a swoosh, blocking everyone's line of sight. Fei Shen was so alarmed he broke out in a cold sweat. He had only just taken a stride out when the apprentice swung a chair and blocked him. "Oh, no!" Fei Shen cried out, "Protect his lordship!" It was too late for the guards in the hallway to break in through the windows. All of a sudden, Gao Zhongxiang was knocked over to the ground. Moving swiftly as if on winged feet, Li Xiong yelled as he charged into the inner room and lunged at the physician, knocking him over to the ground. Both of them crashed into the footrest before the bed, sending the lowered bed curtains fluttering. The steel needles clamped between the physician's fingers aimed right for Li Xiong's eyes. Li Xiong reached out to grasp hold of the physician's hand and slammed his own head into the physician's head, sending the steel needle slamming back onto the ground. The knock on his head made the physician's head swim with dizziness. He backhandedly wrapped his arms around Li Xiong's neck and twisted around to flip Li Xiong over to the ground, holding him in a choke hold. As they tumbled, they bumped over the short table in the inner room. The teapot toppled over and shattered, and scalding hot tea splashed all over Li Xiong's face. Gasping hard for breath, Li Xiong swung a fist at the other man's face, but he struck at empty air. The physician held down Li Xiong. The side of Li Xiong's face chafed against the broken porcelain fragments, stabbing him until it was all streaked with blood. He shouted, "Lizard! Lizard!" The physician lifted his steel needle, but unexpectedly, he felt a sudden weight to his back, and his entire person went crashing over to the ground where he tumbled. Covering half of his face, he said something at the top of his voice in the Bianxia tongue and swiftly went groping for the steel needle that had dropped. Xiao Qiye abruptly hauled up the lizard by the back of his collar and slammed him face down to the ground. Those in the outer chamber heard a few muffled thud, thud, then all was silent within. The guards held down the apprentice. Fei Sheng had not even caught his breath when the bamboo blinds swung wildly from being bumped into. The physician with his entire head all bloodied rolled onto the rug in the outer room, already devoid of life. Xiao Qiye's expression was icy and piercing. He forcibly suppressed his fury and said in a frosty tone, "Seal the place from the courtyard to the main gate with one person every 10 steps. Who screened them? Scram without needing me to tell you to." Everyone within and outside of the courtyard fell to their knees. To think an entire residence of guards could let the other party openly enter the inner room. Fei Sheng's cold sweat never once stopped. He kowtowed, knocking his head on the ground, not daring to even utter a sound. End chapter. Note: 1 hour of Mao is 5 to 7 a.m. 2 hour of C is 9 to 11 a.m. 3 hour of Shen 3 to 5 p.m. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 253, Sick from the Cold. Once the hour of Chen came around, the atmosphere in the city of Duan province underwent an abrupt change. Soldiers filled the streets and alleys, while the garrison troops and the imperial army took turns to patrol. The 4 gates remained tightly shut. Everywhere, the clicking sound of military boots and the clanking sound of blades abounded. The atmosphere in the residence was heavy. All the guards were on high alert and ready for combat. They no longer dared to slacken even the slightest. Xiao Qiye squatted before Li Xiong and asked, "Do you know of him?" Ointment was being applied to Li Xiong's injured face as he answered, "Yeah. He's a lizard. They drink Geetle's milk. Very stinky." Xiao Qiye frowned. "Not a scorpion." Used to be a scorpion." Li Xiong spoke in such a hurry that he stumbled over his words a little. "But later, he became a lizard." Ding Tao could not make head or tail of it. "What do you mean by he used to be but not later?" "They are the lizards." Li Xiong patted his own arm. "My big bro spoke to them before. They are not the same as Hai." He could not remember Harigo's name. "Not the same as Hai. They are not cattle and sheep." In the eyes of the 12 tribes, the scorpions were the cattle and sheep of Geetle. Their status was low and humble. Xiao Qiye remembered Zwilai. Zwilai was a lizard too, but Zwilai had clear Bianxia characteristics, so it seemed that a lizard was still a scorpion, only that they had a change of name. Lizards. Xiao Qiye looked up at Li Xiong and guessed, the lizards are Amuer's scorpions. That's why they have a higher status than Achi and Harigo. Li Xiong gave him a thumbs up and said happily, "Right. They have lands where they can ride horses." As he spoke, he sulked again. They are all very bad people who love beating others, and they don't play with the scorpions. They are more valuable than the scorpions. Xiao Qiye pressed against his thumb ring and rotated it gently. Hassan had not even died for 3 days, and already Amuer's lizards had appeared in the courtyard. Did they come along with Zwilai's squad? Or were they originally here to begin with? You did well. Xiao Qiye raised a hand and patted Li Xiong on the head. Keep watch over his lordship here. Second master will give you sweets. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. You've always been meticulous when it comes to this kind of matter. Qiao Tianya's hair was not even thoroughly dry when he arrived at the prison. How could you make such an oversight today? Fei Sheng, who was scrutinizing the corpse, shook his head upon hearing him. The assassins had great Zhou features, and they spoke the local language even more smoothly than you and I do. He turned his head to the side. They even had proof of household registration. Qiao Tianya turned the corpse to look it over. Shenzhequan established the Zongbo census register, so every family's and every household's records could be traced and checked. If these assassins even had household registrations, that meant that they had very likely laid in ambush in Zongbo even earlier than when Shenzhequan made the registration. This makes it a tough one to handle, Qiao Tianya said in a quiet voice. There's no way to tell them apart if they are hiding amongst the local people. If we were to speak of flaws, there's only one. Fei Sheng pointed at the corpse's arm. Tattoo. Qiao Tianya's gaze shifted down. Sure enough, he saw a lizard tattoo on the side of the corpse's arm. Back then, to investigate the scorpions, Master had the various yamen record down the names of those who had tattoos. Fei Sheng folded his arms. I've already sent a letter to Yu Xiaozhe in Dun province. If there are no records of these two men's names, then they snuck their way in when the city was breached. Qiao Tianya nodded. As he retracted his hand, he looked at Fei Sheng. There was no smile on his face as he said, have you ever considered why they would have such obvious marks on them despite being assassins who sneaked their way in? They were all Jin Yue, and they knew very well the necessity of disguise and camouflage. The scorpions had a reason for having tattoos, but what need was there for the lizards, who were of even higher status than the scorpions? The expression in Fei Sheng's eyes was grave as he lightly clicked his tongue. Tisk. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shenzhequan woke up once at the hour of Shen, and Xiao Qiye fed him the medicine. Shenzhequan was so feverish that he was in a daze. He could hear Xiao Qiye talking, but Xiao Qiye's voice kept fading in and out. Lanzhou, Xiao Qiye said something as he brushed aside the hair by Shenzhequan's cheek. Shenzhequan gasped lightly as if he could not breathe. Taking the spoon into his mouth, he swallowed the last mouthful of medicine. Xiao Qiye wiped Shenzhequan's sweat with a soaked handkerchief. He tilted his head, and the tip of his nose rubbed against Xiao Qiye's bandaged palm. His lips opened and closed. Xiao Qiye lowered his head to listen. Handkerchief. Shenzhequan's words were all over the place. Mine. It's with me. Xiao Qiye covered Shenzhequan's soaked palm with his free hand. Once you recover, I'll give it to you. Shenzhequan was so ill he was barely conscious. In his pain, he indistinctly whimpered twice. Xiao Qiye's entire person leaned over on his stomach beside the pillow and coaxed him, I'll really give it to you. Shenzhequan did not believe him. He frowned, as if he was struggling, his partially closed eyes betraying just how sad he was as he buried them into Xiao Qiye's palm. It was in this way that he tugged at Xiao Qiye's heartstrings. Xiao Qiye lowered his head and pressed up against Shenzhequan's temple, against his sweat. The taste of bitterness saturated the tip of Shenzhequan's tongue. All his half-opened eyes saw was a mosaic of bizarre, surreal scenes. Only Xiao Qiye's scent surrounded him, making him seem to float among the waves of grass. In a very, very small voice, he called out, Xiao Air. Xiao Qiye kissed him and answered with a deep nasal twang, mm. Shenzhen frowned several times and said with his voice breaking up, "I want to eat sweets." Xiao Qiye's heart that had been on tenterhooks relaxed a little. He got up to mix him some honeyed water. Shenzhen only drank 2 spoonfuls of it, only needing the tip of his tongue to get a taste of the sweetness. Once again, Xiao Qiye rinsed the handkerchief and wiped down the sweat on Shenzhen's neck. From the feel of it, his fever seemed to have subsided a little. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The gentlemen in the side hall were all restless with anxiety. The suffocating smell of smoking pipes permeated the room, and no one made to get up even when the hour of high came around. They had even forgotten about their meals, as concerned as they were about the prefectural lord. "All these physicians are useless," Tan Tai, who sat on the chair, and said to Kong Ling. "Look, mister, what if I immediately headed out of the city on my horse and search again in Dun province?" Gao Zongxiang's face paled at the mere mention of this. He hurriedly waved his hands. "That won't do. The assassins today had clear origins that could stand up to scrutiny. If there really are spies, no one will be able to tell them apart." Kong Ling's frown did not let up. The entire room of people fell silent once again. Not long after, they heard the sound of rain falling again outside. The guards braved the rain and took turns to be on duty. Lanterns that had been lit up late in the night brightly illuminated the various paths within the residence, leaving no blind spots for anyone to take advantage of. Everyone did not get to rest much after the battle, and by the time the hour of Zhou had come and gone, those with weaker constitutions could no longer take it. They reclined against the chairs to doze off, drifting between nodding off and staying awake because they did not dare to sleep, and so it was in this way they hung in there. Yao Wenyu took off his fur collar when he entered the room. The sound of the wheelchair startled quite a number of people awake. He placed the fur collar on his lap and said in a mild tone, "Second master is here, so his lordship is certain to be fine. I know that all of you here are burning with anxiety, but now the battle has just stopped, the documents from the yamen of the various prefectures are piling up. It would be inappropriate to wait until his lordship wakes up to deal with them. It's enough for Changfeng and Jinwei to keep watch here. The rest of you can go back and rest first. Tomorrow morning, all matters are to be handled normally. Act at your own discretion for trivial matters, whereas for major affairs you are uncertain about, present them to the side hall, and we will discuss and come to a resolution together." Kong Ling also got to his feet and said, "His lordship is presently ill. It is indeed inadvisable for us to pile him with pressing work. Everyone, please head back first." Everyone stood up and responded in the affirmative, then filed out of the room one after the other. Gao Zhongxiang poured tea for Yao Wenyu and said, "Yuan Zhou is sensitive to the cold. You should ask someone to accompany you." Yao Wenyu took the tea and said his thanks. "I have the fur collar and overcoat, so it's fine. It has been raining non-stop these few days. I see that the drainage of the public ditches in the city is going along smoothly. There has been no incident. At the beginning of the new year, Tan Tai who roused himself up and rubbed his eye with the blade scar. Everyone was here at the beginning of the year, fearing that the melted snow would cause a blockage, so they went out of the way to dredge it once. The ones in Deng province are clogged, but it's not a big issue. His Excellency, you watched them being dredged during his tour of inspection," Gao Zhongxiang said. "There have been plenty of updates coming in from Tse province in these 2 days. Other than the letter in which His Excellency Zhou asked after his lordship, there are also those discussing the 8 cities. The properties of the Pan clan had been confiscated and the spring plowing was missed in Dan City. This was already the 6th month. Once the autumn harvest that was just around the corner came calling, the meals of the commoners of Dan City would be a matter of worry. We are fighting a battle here, and so is Chu capital," Kong Ling said. "I heard the news that the Grand Secretariat has already instructed the Ministry of Rites to begin preparation for the enthronement ceremony. Han Cheng was dead, and while the Empress Dowager counted on her connection to Huaxianji to preserve her life, She was completely imprisoned in the inner court where the harem resided. The authority to deploy the 8 great training divisions of the capital command troops returned into the heir apparent's hands. Li Jianting had the Qidong garrison troops to act as surety too, so how could the noble clans who could not even fend for themselves stop her? We are besieged with external foes. If everyone works as one to assist his lordship, Biancha will not pose a difficult problem. But Chu capital as of now is torn apart by disunity. Shui Yanking's confiscation and sealing off of the Pan clan's properties has already caused the 8 cities to stir with restlessness. Yao Wenyu said in a soft voice, the enthronement of the heir apparent will prove to come bearing down even more menacingly on them. Speaking of which, Kong Ling looked at Chen Yang, we still don't know what happened in the Bianjun commandery. Has an agreement been reached with the Qiang tribe? Straightening out the military affairs, Chen Yang said, had that been the case, second master wouldn't have been late. Dalantai of the Qiang tribe agreed to our request and promised not to obstruct Commander-in-Chief Qi from moving north. He took Hassan's thank you gift and indeed kept his words not to obstruct Commander-in-Chief Qi from mobilizing troops to Getal, but he violated the oath of allegiance and mounted a surprise attack on the Bianjun commandery just when Second Master was preparing to deploy troops to Duan province. Just as Qi Zuyan predicted, Dalantai did not take sides with anyone. He did not want to submit to Amuir at all, nor did he want to place himself at Shenzequan's disposal. He saw his opportunity from Hassan's and Shenzequan's requests. He wanted to pass through the Bianjun commandery to occupy Suotian Pass to the south, which had no other strong and capable general stationed there after their loss of Fenyushan. The Qiang tribe lived on the grasslands in the south. When Dalantai roamed the desert, he came to understand that there was no room for the bears there. They endured the rigors of an arduous journey, trekking through difficult terrains and rivers, to return to a place near their homeland, all to seek a new place to live. For this, they were willing to risk their lives and take up their blades to fight with everything they had. It was on the yellow sands in the desert that Xiao Qiye's armored cavalry crossed paths with the bear horses. The Bianjun commandery fought for 2 days, and Dalantai died there in battle. The Qiang tribe seemed to be forever unable to cross over that threshold, and they could only, once again, retreat to the desert. The reinforcements Hassan left behind in Getal were handed over to Commander-in-Chief Qi. Chen Yang raised the military report in his hand. And going by last night's urgent report, Commander-in-Chief Qi found out on her return journey that Amuir is in the midst of deploying his troops. At these words, the entire hall promptly grew tense. Gao Zhongxiang stammered, then, we are going to fight again. Chen Yang gestured for him to relax. It's just a transfer of troops. After all, the commanding general in the battle zone is gone. Amuir has to send someone who can take over Hassan. I feel this person might very well be himself. Because Xiao Qiye did not return Hassan's head. The specific arrangements for military affairs will have to depend on Second Master's instructions. Tantai Hu reassured the various gentlemen. No matter what, they won't fight their way to the base of the city anymore. At the moment, we have the upper hand. Even if Amuir heads into battle himself, he might not necessarily be more formidable than Hassan. Besides, if he wants to cross the Hashi River, he had to ask Second Master for permission. Only then did the atmosphere in the side hall ease off a little. As they were discussing, they suddenly heard a huge commotion in the hallway. Chen Yang lifted the hanging screen and poked his head out for a look. Ding Tao cried so hard a snot bubble popped out of his nose. Tugging at Chen Yang, he shouted, "Gur, call the physicians in quickly. His lordship is burning up again." The physicians were trembling with trepidation as they gathered in the walkway and discussed the prescriptions in whispers. The rain washed down upon the jasmine orange in the courtyard, covering the ground all over with petals. Qiao Tianya and Fei Sheng braved the rain as they returned, stepping across the flower petals before swiftly wiping the water off their bodies under the eaves. "The physicians who saw Yuan Zhou before are all here." Qiao Tianya threw the handkerchief back, as are the physicians Qing transferred over from Zhuexi, and not one of them can treat the illness. This fever keeps relapsing. Chen Yang did not dare to speak facing the window. He turned to the side and said in a whisper, "They said his constitution is a gone case. He's just like porcelain. Few dare to prescribe medicine. That's what they said about Yuan Zhou the last time." Qiao Tianya did not raise his voice at the physicians. After a moment's pause, he continued, "It's true that his lordship ruined his body in his early years consuming that medication, but these days, he has been recuperating at home, so that shouldn't be the case at all. Master also wants to be cured deep down in his heart, and he has been taking his medicine on schedule." Fei Sheng clutched the handkerchief he used to wipe away the water. He was worried sick. I suppose he must have been too badly injured that day. They were going to disperse the smell of medicine in the room, and no one wanted to provoke the second master at this moment, so they stood under the eaves and waited to be summoned. But within a few moments of the servant carrying the medicine entering, they heard Shen Zequan vomiting. Xiao Qi, who was partially hugging Shen Zequan, touched Shen Zequan's back, which was already soaked in sweat. The medicine was all spilled over the ground. Shen Zequan did not have anything to throw up, so after puking out bile, he dry heaved. His stomach was in a twist at present, and his bouts of vomiting were so bad that he retched himself awake. Fog started to materialize in the middle of the night. Deathly white lantern lights swayed in the rain. The sound of footsteps in the courtyard never once stopped. Rain soaked the courtyard damp, and the bedding had already been changed. Once. Fei Sheng apprehensively said, "Prepare a charcoal brazier and keep the fire going to dry it up a little." Chen Yang saw that the bandages being taken out were all soaked in blood. He did not know if it was Xiao Qi's or Shen Zequan's. Li Xiong sat cross-legged by the door and slept for a while, waking up when the hour of yin came around. Fei Sheng had the kitchen give Li Xiong rice. Li Xiong buried his head in the large bowl and gobbled it down. Once he had eaten his fill, he continued to sit and stare at the people entering and exiting. Persuade the second master to sleep for a moment at the hour of Mao. Qiao Tianya squatted beside the pillar and struck up a fire to light up his pipe. Even someone forged in iron like him can't take it and just make do and sleep inside. Those of us who guard the door. He had yet to finish his words when a hand reached out from the side and gently nudged aside his smoking pipe. Qiao Tianya turned back and looked at Yao Wenyu. "It's rather suffocating." Yao Wenyu turned his wheelchair to face the principal room. Willowy wisps of smoke spiraled, turning into the tiny bit of invisible tenderness in the dripping wet rainy night. With hands on knees, Qiao Tianya stood up and extinguished the smoking pipe. It was all silent in the courtyard during the hour of Mao. Night fell, and day broke again. The guards who had been successively taking the night watch were all wearing out, as passive as they were in their wait. Fei Sheng was leaning against the pillar with his eyes closed to catch a breather when his ears suddenly twitched. He opened his eyes, and it was a long while later when there was movement in the doorway. "He's back." Fei Sheng quickly leaped down the steps. "Gu Jin is back." One of the lanterns under the eaves went out. Xiao Qi heard activity, and after a moment, the hanging drapes lifted slightly. Second Master Gu Jin, who had braved the elements and hardships the entire arduous journey, kneeled on one knee in the outer room. "I'm back late. I was midway through my journey when I heard that the Bianchi cavalry besieged the city of Duan province. Even when I rushed through the bridleway, I couldn't make it in time." Xiao Qi suddenly jolted to his feet and came out of the inner chamber. The few people under the eaves listened with bated breath and rapt attention. Without wiping the rainwater off his face, Gu Jin met Xiao Qi's gaze and, not daring to hesitate as he reported, "Second Master, the Venerable Master, is indeed dead." End chapter. Notes. 1 hour of Chen is 7 to 9 a.m. 2 hour of Shen is 3 to 5 p.m. 3 hour of Hai is 9 to 11 p.m. 4 hour of Zhou is 1 to 3 a.m. 5 hour of yin is 3 to 5 am. 6 hour of mao is 5 to 7 am.